everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you the final steps for beading a red dress pin. I've done all of the beading on it, I've secured all of the beads, and now I'm going to do the final steps. These are going to be the color beads that I'm going to be using to finish the edge. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So first, if you can see, my string is at the back of my work. I'm going to secure it with a couple knots through a couple of the other strings at the back. I'm going to now do the step where I cut out the dress. So for this step, I'm going to flip my work over. This will allow me to see all the threads while I'm cutting, so I can be sure not to accidentally snip any of the threads. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start cutting out the dress. Now that I've cut out my dress, I'm going to just burn along the edge to melt the beading foundation a little bit closer than what I can cut. While I do this, I'm still going to be careful not to accidentally burn any of the threads. Alright, so now that I've singed all the edges, I'm going to start cutting out the shape of the red dress into the vinyl backing that I have. I'm going to lay the bad side facing the bad side of the fabric, so it will look like this. Now I'm going to cut out the vinyl backing along the edge of the dress. Now I have finished cutting out the backing. I'm going to start putting on the pin. So to do that, first I'm going to take off the backing, and you can either stitch the pin onto the beadwork, or what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using some super glue. I'm just going to glue this bar piece here on and stick it like that. I generally prefer to glue mine on just because it works so much faster and it's very secure, but it's totally up to you to decide what you would like to do. The next step is we're going to cut some slits in the backing fabric so that our pin can poke through. So I'll show you how to do that. The first step is to kind of line up your backing on the beadwork and feel for where the ball end of the pin is and kind of pinch it and hold it into place. I'm going to quickly get my scissors and just make a little slit in the fabric. I'm now going to cut a small rectangle around where I just made that slit to make the hole bigger for the pin to poke through from there. So now when I hold it up, that part will be able to stick out from there. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom of the pin. Now my backing looks like this. So if I open up my pin, I can put the backing like this, and that will allow the bulk of the pin to be behind the backing and the pin will still be able to open and close. So I'm going to close the pin so that the backing can stay put, and we're going to sew up the edges with the beads now. So I've started by getting a new thread, and I tied a few knots at the end. I'm personally going to start my beading along the side edge of the dress, but you can start anywhere. So I'm going to poke from the back of my work to the front only through the layer of the beading foundation. And I'm going to pull all the way to my knot. I'm going to lift up the backing and tuck the knot under so it can stay hidden under there. I'm now going to grab one bead. I'm going to poke around 1 millimeter away from the thread that's sticking out, through the backing and through the beading foundation. And I'm going to pull all the way. I'm now going to go up through the bead and I'm going to pull it tight. I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be working in a clockwise direction around my work. I personally prefer that way. I do not go counterclockwise. If you are following this instruction, the best way for you to understand would probably be to also do a clockwise direction. The next step is to pick up 2 beads, and for the rest of our edging we're going to continue picking up 2 beads each time. The 1 bead is just for the first one and possibly also for the last one as well. That will make more sense once we get back to this point here. You're going to be following the same step. Now I'm going to go around 2 millimeters away from the last bead that I placed, and I'm poking through the vinyl backing and through the beading foundation with the needle coming towards me. I'm going to pull all the way, and I'm now only going to poke my needle up through the one on the right, and I'm going to pull it tight. When you pull it tight, that will create this sort of picot design on the edge, and that is the same pattern that we are going to repeat the whole way around. I will show you a couple more times and then I will pause the video and I will continue until I get to the end, and then I'll show you how to finish it off. So I'm again going to start by picking up 2 beads. I'm going to poke from the back to the front through both layers around 2 millimeters away from my last bead, pull it through, and I'm going to poke up through the bead on the right, pull it tight, and there you go. Now the back should look like this, the front will look like that, and if your backing is a little bit bigger than your beadwork, you can trim it as you go. Normally it will stretch as you stitch it together, so over here you can see that the backing is a little bit bigger than my work. I'm going to trim that when I get over there, and yeah, good luck with your edging, and I'll be back at the end. Now that I'm at the end of my work, I've pretty much done the entire edging. There is just a little bit of space left, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another bead, but only one this time, and I'm going to poke my needle down through the hole of the first bead that I placed and come out through the backing. Pull. That will close the gap. I'm going to poke just in the middle here to the front of my work. Pull it tight. I'm going to poke my needle up from the bottom up through one of the beads that are placed like this. And then with the string that's going in between the 2 beads, I'm going to create a couple of knots. I'm going to poke my needle through. I'm going to go down like before the bead that's just next to it and pull it tight. Now I can cut my thread. That step was mainly just to kind of weave in the end. Now I can singe my thread and it will be done. And that's the pin all finished. I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you to understand the last few steps of making this beaded pin. And if you feel like sharing your photos of your finished piece, feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I would love to see them. I hope you have a really great day. Bye!